Okay, so welcome everyone. You can go to the next slide. Can everyone hear me? Thumbs up? Okay, good. Okay, so I'm just gonna, I'll just read through this. So the Design Catalyst program is a competitive grant program providing seed capital, business mentorship, professional development training, and peer-to-peer networking oh no, I need to move everyone's thing to the other side to help design businesses reach their growth goals. So all of these that are highlighted in bold are components of our program that we will go into more depth in later. Next slide. So this is just to highlight some of the program success. Catalyst started in 2015 and since then has invested more than $1 million in more than 80 Rhode Island businesses, which is very exciting. So like I said, these are the components of the program that we will go more in depth into: professional development, business mentorship, seed funding, which is reimbursement funding. We'll talk about that. And finally, peer-to-peer networking. Next slide.
So for the past 7 Design Catalyst cohorts, Design by Rhode Island has served small design and creative businesses who have had Providence residential and Providence business addresses specifically. And this was due to the impactful funding from the City of Providence. This year, the City of Providence is remaining a strong supporter and funder of this program, but also for the first time, due to additional funding from Rhode Island Commerce, we are able to expand our reach to accept applicants who live and work anywhere in the state of Rhode Island, which is very exciting. I want to just note that when you are filling out the application, which maybe some of you have already noted, that you will answer questions about where your home residence is listed, as well as your business address is listed, to determine which of the program's funding will apply to your business specifically.
Okay, so this slide, you will see this again, but we just wanted to point out some dates. So the application is due next Friday. After that, we'll be doing interviews from mid-October through early November with notification to awardees in early November. We did want to point out that orientation is December 7th. It's an afternoon session, 4 to 7 on that day. And then the program itself runs from January to May of 2024. So we'll have more on the dates later, but just to give a timeline of how we're moving through this. So it moves kind of quick. So just to go over eligibility quickly. Oh my gosh, Rue, am I doing this or you? I'm so sorry.
I can jump in if you like.
I'll do it. We had it all planned out and I got, okay. So the eligibility for the Catalyst program is for businesses to live and work in Rhode Island and to demonstrate a commitment to staying. We are looking for semi-established small design and creative businesses with fewer than 5 employees, including the owners, but that does not include volunteers or unpaid interns. All of the owners of the business have to meet income requirements. There's more information on this on the website and through the application, but just be aware that that is something that is an eligibility requirement. We cannot fund students or past program recipients words. And finally, all participants are required to commit and participate fully in the program. I do want to note that there are in-person days and virtual commitments as well, and we have all the dates for that, but that is what that would entail. Next slide. Once we get to the interview stage, we'll be asking folks who've made it to that stage to provide proof of residency. We just wanted folks to be aware of this. So this includes any of the following in your name: a utility bill, car registration, residential lease, voter registration. Worth noting that a driver's license, passport, things like that are not going to prove residency. But again, this is not something that you would have to have ready for the deadline next Friday. It would be for the interview stage, so just be aware of
So
that.
I'll jump back in here. So similar to what Kat was saying, this slide also is something that you will see something similar in the application, but in terms of like giving us any extra paperwork, we won't need that until if you reach the interview stage. So to give you a little bit of a layout around income requirements, in order to be eligible for this program, all owners, so if you have a co-owner, they are one of the owners too, they must meet the income requirements as laid out in the application. When you fill out the application, you will follow the instructions, which will lead you to referencing the Housing and Urban Development's qualifications for low to moderate income by either the City of Providence or the State of Rhode Island. Just to reiterate, we receive funding for this program from both the City of Providence and from Rhode Island Commerce, which have slightly different income cap limits. In this example that I have here, which is just an example, if you file as a single person, your gross income cap would be, as you can see, the number 1, and then below it, the $54,150. If you file as a household of 3, your gross income cap would be $69,650, and so on. If you have any questions about what you're supposed to reference here, it would be your 2022 income tax form number 1080 and line number 11. Again, when you're in the application, you won't have to give us your tax return, but should you make it to the interview stage, that is when we'd be asking for a full 2022 tax return. And again, this is related to our funders. Okay. So I want to just go over some program expectations just in general. So we want to make sure that everyone who participates in this program is able to commit to all of the program dates, virtual and in person. So much of this program is about actually like getting to know each other, participating with one another, like you grow together actually as a cohort, meeting with your mentor on a regular basis. This is an intense program that like you can get a lot out of as long as you are like tapped in and ready to go. There are regular surveys that go out after each of the clinics and workshops, and presenting your business at the final showcase, which is in May. And the final showcase is a celebration of the work you've done in this program. It's an event with funders of this program, along with the public, where all of the participants in the program get to share their business with a short pitch. It's a really great opportunity to get the word out about your business and to share like all of the hard work that you've done during the program. It's often a place where past participants, instructors will come out and sort of rally around this current cohort. It's a really good time. So there is also a pitch workshop. So if you're like, oh dear, I have to pitch my business, don't worry. We will prepare you for that. Upon acceptance into the program, grantees evaluate and establish 3 business milestones that they will meet throughout the program. This is also in the application. It is talked about that there will be another review of this upon acceptance. And what are milestones, you might ask? Well, milestones are business growth milestones that are significant achievements or stages that a business reaches as it expands and develops. They often indicate the progress and success of a business, and examples can include, but are not limited to, the following. So it can be revenue goals, getting new customers, growing your program, acquiring a studio space if that's part of something that you need for your business, or hiring new employees. These milestones that you settle upon, and often with your mentor, they become part of the contract agreement for the program. And the reason why I mention this is because the milestones are actually tied to funding, and the funding is reimbursed in relationship towards working towards those milestones. And that happens in about 3 or 4 rounds of payments. The first 3 payments are reimbursed based on the progress towards each of those stated milestones. And I will explain that a little bit more in the next slide. So milestone reports are submitted along with invoices in order to receive those funding installments. Your mentors and business workshops are resources to help you achieve those milestones. So going into funding and reimbursements, as I just mentioned, the grant funding you receive, it is a reimbursement style grant, and it is tied to those milestones. So we'll get into that a little bit more here. A reimbursement style grant is a grant where funding is provided to grant recipients, but only after expenses have been incurred. So the reimbursement process isn't immediate. It will take several weeks. And the funding for this program requires keeping documentation of your purchases, submitting those receipts so that you can actually receive that funding. More on this in terms of the nitty-gritty, should you be accepted into the program, but it is things that are worth noting. So to give a more visual example of what a reimbursement grant looks like in tied to milestones, I presented the slide. In this example, Jessie was awarded $15,000 for this program. This slide is also on our website, should you want to reference it. I'm going to kind of breeze through this slide. I know there's a lot of text on it because I want to get at how milestones and reimbursements are connected. The ins and outs of the paperwork are not as important at this current moment. But back to this, Jessie has $15,000 as a reimbursement grant, and they are a glass artist. One of their milestones is to increase their production on a product they've designed, and it's a glass. So they purchase some equipment to assist in increasing that production, as well as another tool. One of those pieces of equipment is $4,500, the other is $300. And sorry, I'm noting someone wants to be admitted into the room. Here we go. Okay. Jessie will submit quotes for the item that is a higher priced item, because quotes are required for items that are over $500. Items that are less than that don't need the 3 quotes. All of those receipts, et cetera, will get submitted. And once they're submitted, they get reviewed by our funders. And then that money will get reimbursed to Design by Rhode Island, which then will get reimbursed back to Jessie ultimately. This is mostly to illustrate you spend money up front, there's a waiting period, and then that money gets reimbursed back to you. So to reiterate that, we just want to quadruple check that all applicants should be aware that businesses will have to incur expenses prior to receiving that reimbursement. Take that into consideration when applying for the amount of funding. And, so very much of like whatever you need to hold for that money depends on how much grant you receive. So if a business is receiving a full $15,000 grant, they should be prepared to be able to carry around 1/3 of that, which would be $5,000 worth of debt while that reimbursement is being processed.
Okay, mentorship. This is another component of the program. Next slide. So, yay. Each grantee is thoughtfully paired with a business mentor, and we require that grantees meet with their business mentor one-on-one twice a month during the duration of the program. Next slide. Professional development training. Okay, so this is thank you. So we have workshops and clinics. Like I said earlier, the workshops are in person and I didn't say this, they are full day sessions. The dates will be posted online. I believe they're already there. So all of this is to say, don't worry so much about this is just to show that there's in-person requirements and there's virtual requirements. And we do have a slide with all the dates, which actually might be the next slide. Yay, okay. So like we mentioned earlier, this program kind of moves. It moves. So the orientation is December 7th. And then, like we said, the program runs January through May. Next slide. I think that, okay. So like we said, the deadline is next Friday, 13th, with the interviews and then the notification happening in November. Next slide. And I think, yay, I think that's it. So now we have some time for questions. I have not, okay, let me try to look at the chat and see what's going on.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, if you know how to use the little reactions, just like put a little hand up. You can also wave and we shall see you. And all right. Okay. Is this Irene?
Hi, yes, this is Irene.
Okay.
Thanks, Rue. So I have a question. I already put in my application. My question is, in terms of, is it possible to change the amount of grant funding than what was stated? Because because I was supposed to put an amount, right? Is that like set already, or can I change that? Or will I have the opportunity when I speak with the mentor if I get in?
The amount that you put in the application is the amount that we have. So I guess the one thing I did not fully get into is like, once all the applications come in, those applications go to a jury, and that jury will go through the rubric and like decide who goes to the next stage and has an interview. And so that grant amount that you put in the application, that should be the amount that they are viewing. If you specifically want to change that amount, as long as it's not changing any other part of your application, I believe that you can also go in there and edit. If you cannot, please reach out and email Kat.
Okay. I can, all right. So then I would just try to get back. I guess I would just have to retrieve that application somehow and then try to edit it.
I honestly cannot tell you right now if this application is editable on your end. I know that they send you a copy of it once it's done. But if you have an amount in there that you want to change, then you cannot edit it. Please reach out and email Kat with that amount.
Okay. So Kat, I just would need your email somehow.
Yeah.
You want to put it in a chat or something, I can do that. I just also have a question too. I'll be really fast. Okay, so the amount that I'll just be honest. So the amount that I made for income for 2022 exceeds the amount. However, what happens if you lost your job and like have been unemployed? Like, can I substantiate it with RIDLT documents, or is this hard and fast? It's got to be 2022 1040 documents.
Unfortunately, because this is going through city and state funders, we have to go play by those rules, which means it has to be by 2022 tax documents.
Okay, thanks.
I'll add just that we are hoping to run this again in later this year. That's not hard and fast, but it would be after you file your 2023 tax return, and you could apply with a 2023 tax return if that makes a difference for a later cohort. But that we're not 100% sure that will happen, so I can't promise that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the same for co-owner situation? So my co-owner, I believe, filed her taxes out of state for the year 2022, but resides here this year. So does that also apply to our situation where we have two owners for the business?
I believe so, yes, because both would have to be passed through our funders.
Okay.
But the tax return, as long as the tax return shows that the co-owner is LMI, it should be okay. It doesn't matter that it was out of state, as long as they can prove that they're currently in state.
Okay. Okay. It's a bit, I can like ask separately. We have a very complicated situation, so I don't want to take up everyone's time. And also, it's a little personal too, so I don't want to like divulge in public.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll contact separately.
Yeah, that would make sense to do. Absolutely. Thank you, Yumi, for the question.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay.
Elizabeth has asked to see the income chart again. That income chart was an example. The accurate income charts can be found in the application.
Thank you, Barrett. Okay. Jill.
Classify reimbursable, or maybe what's easier is what doesn't classify as a reimbursable expense.
Sorry, ask that one more time.
Like, what classifies as reimbursable? Like transportation to a shop, or like service it. Like if I were to hire a business manager, or not manager, but like mentor or something like that. There's like a lot of different ways that we can go that I might write on my taxes, but might not write on a Design by RI grant.
Absolutely. So
So
this
as well.
this goes back into the milestones sort of question. So the milestones are sort of these things that then you add your expenses to hit. Does that make sense? So like, I'm just going to make up an example. Let's say you wanted to increase customer awareness, and you wanted to do that through a marketing effort. And in your marketing effort, you wanted to hire somebody to help you do that work. You can do that under that milestone. The way there are things that are required.
So I could like hire a consultant.
You can require a consultant. I will say that, to just be clear, with the whole quote situation, you will have to there's some hoop jumping that must be done to do that, where you'd have to like get quotes for multiple people to prove why you're choosing the person you are choosing. But you can hire a consultant.
Sure. That makes sense.
A big no-no is construction. You cannot use this funding for construction. That's like the biggest, there's no way around it.
But construction capital improvement or construction we're updating for us open studio?
If you are hiring someone to change a physical space, that is not allowed.
Okay.
Like that. An example would be like, you can use the money to buy paint and paint your walls. You could use the money to buy tools to do something related to your job. But if you hire a contractor to come in and do something, that is
not allowed. Okay. Well, you don't like my studio?
Yeah. It's just like, that's a big one that comes up a lot, that people, are like, it would really help my business to do this thing. And it's just a common.
I think you might have a tough time fitting another employee in there with you. It'd be a little tough to perform art there.
You call me.
Actually, I had a quick question actually.
Justin, before you jump in, I want to just say one more thing about.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
that's okay. When you're filling out, when you're going into this and you're saying like what you want to spend your expenses on and your milestones, there is an opportunity once you are accepted into the program to make a change to them. So if you put in there, for example, if somebody accidentally put in there like a whole lot of construction, but the overall thesis of your business and like what you want to do is something that the jury was like, we stand behind this person, there would be a conversation in there that talks about like, great, you're in the program, but these particular things you need to change. So it's not that if you apply right now with something that is considered not eligible for reimbursement, that does not disqualify you from being in the program. Just to be clear. Okay, Justin, go ahead.
Great. Thanks, by the way. So for me personally, like one of my goals would be trying to bring on an additional employee, right? So, $15,000 probably isn't going to cover that, right? If, depending on what they're being paid. So what does that situation look like? Is that like if my milestone is to increase the number of employees that I have, do they basically be like, all right, we can dedicate $15,000 towards employee one salary for this year that can be reimbursed to you?
So with the way the program is set up, you'd have to have 3 milestones that you would need to work towards achieving. Mm-hmm. So one of them
could divide the 15 between the 3.
Well, it doesn't have to be, it's not necessarily about bringing on employees, but here, I'm just going to talk through an example without actually knowing what your business is. So like, if you have as one of your milestones, you want to bring on an employee, you could figure out something in there where like maybe you divide up your money. Let's say you get the full $15,000 and you're like, okay, $5,000 provides X amount of time of this employee's salary,
Yeah, gotcha.
you know, and like the other two milestones can be other things, but
Perfect. Yeah,
okay.
that's exactly what I was looking for. Nailed it. Thank you.
And the thing is, like, you can write this in there and like still have questions. And like I said, like if it doesn't work perfectly with the way the program is structured, it will be a conversation later on.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank
It's
you.
also worth noting in regards to an employee that, you know, the program is essentially running January through May. So we can't reimburse expenses outside of that. So those are the times that we're reimbursing, not, you know, earlier or later.
Mhm.
Okay. George.
I was curious if there was any sort of like preference towards like applying to the program with an already established business or like a long running business versus like a newer business idea.
Okay. I mean, some of this is going to have to do with how the jury views that business. The like starting guidelines here are trying to find creative and design businesses that already have something there that they're working with, so that this is sort of a boost to push that business into the next phase. I don't know if that's helpful in answering your question, but I don't think, like, I can't give you a hard and fast answer on that one, actually.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
All right. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions in the chat. I see Kat, you look like you're handling the questions over there in the chat. Is there anything in the chat that I can answer out loud? Okay. It looks like the schedule has been posted. All right. Jill.
I guess it has to be a company with an LLC, right? As opposed to an individual artist being a sole proprietor.
No, sole proprietors are
Okay.
fine.
Okay. So I guess, but it's like if you're just kicking off your practice, you could have demonstrated work in your sole proprietor practice, but you're trying to like launch a new product or something, or like a new sculpture or whatever. Like that's possible as well. Okay.
It's totally possible. Well, I'm saying, like, within this info session and the guidelines that we have, we do say people who are like in a place where they're able to push into the next level, but that does not mean that like you apply with something that's a little bit greener, that the jury isn't going to say yes to it. I can't, like I said, I can't quite give you a hard and fast to that one.
Okay. And then I guess the other thing is, if you run a business, that you can apply multiple times with individual owners, right? The business only gets one shot.
You can't.
Or you can't go through the grant program. Like, for example, I run the architecture department, George runs industrial design. We have two different parts of the business, but our company together would only be able to like go through the grant program once, right?
I mean, I think that depends on how your business is structured. If you are a business where you are co-owners of a single business with multiple parts, that's different than if you are individuals with your own businesses who sometimes work together. So I feel like that might be a follow-up question. So like that situation sounds like it might be more individual. So I'd say reach out on that one if you have specific questions for it.
Okay. And then the last one about co-owners, I'm just going to take up your time. If one of the owners can't show up to an in-person for some reason, could the other person go in their place?
Great question. So if there are co-owners of a business, we ask that at least one of them is a consistent face through the whole program. Obviously, if both of you can show up for the whole program, fabulous. You know, if there's a moment where somebody gets sick, like life happens. But the idea is that like
Sure.
if co-owners are signing up for it, rather than it's not a you trade off the things, it's like there's a consistent face who shows up to the workshops and the clinics.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anybody else who hasn't asked a question? Oh, I see. Ayumi, go ahead.
Hi, I have a question about the required attendance for all the meetings that with mentors and, you know, just all the program meetings that there is. I'm assuming that there's no way to like make up or meet at a different time, like that schedule is set in stone, that time is set in stone. Like, for example, like if I'm teaching a class and it conflicts with the class that I'm teaching, like I can't, you know, like I noticed that there were some days, like I teach every Wednesday during a couple of the meeting times, and that's just not something that I can get out of because I teach the course. So I'm just curious to see like if there's any flexibility. Obviously if there isn't, like I'll just have to figure that out on my end, but
I would say like typically we want people to be able to attend all the things, like I said, so that there is cohesion there. If you have a particular circumstance that you're aware of ahead of time, it's worth reaching out to have a further discussion about that. The times that are on the website are the ones that are these are the times to show up. The mentor dates, that's something that gets set on an individual basis. So those are way more flexible. Some people meet with their mentor the minimum a month, and some people end up, you know, having phone calls with their mentor every week. It really depends. Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have one more.
Okay.
Are there priority, like when you're going through the applications, are there priorities in terms of how you're ranking the application? I don't know how to say this in like grant speak, but in terms of like feasibility, milestones, like the right time, like do you have ways that you're ranking each application, or it's like the idea makes sense for design for RI,
So,
or engagement, or, you know, metrics for success? What are they?
So we do have a rubric that we give to our jurors to go through when they're going through applications. And I do not have that rubric in front of me at this moment, but feasibility of the project is important. We want to make sure that if you're going through this program, you're able to use that funding in a way that actually is going to help your business and move it forward, and is going to make impact. And so that is something that the jurors will take a look at. I think
Anything else?
that I can give you. I can't give anything else to you off the top of my head. Yeah. All right. I'm sort of like waiting to see if anybody else has like a question that appears.
I'm sorry if this was already answered, but is there a place where there's like a list of reimbursement items that qualify for the grant and ones that do not?
We don't have that currently publicly listed. Part of the reason for not having that up right now is because there is an amount of explanation, and there is actually a workshop that we do with the orientation that goes through a bunch of that stuff. This is mostly because of the way that the funding is received. There's a bunch of like receipts and tracking that needs to be done in order to receive your funding. And without going too, like, I don't want to go too in the weeds in this info session about it. And if we post it up online, the team will have a little talk about this afterwards about where we feel like the information on that lies. It's not the matter that we want to hide anything from anybody, but we don't want to make things overly confusing by adding more information to that, if that makes sense.
If you do have a question about like the types of things you imagine you'll be funding and want to know generally if they're acceptable, we can give you a general answer if you reach out.
What is the best email to reach out to with like for further questions that we may have like that?
Kat, I believe, stuck Kat's email in the chat.
I put the email in the chat.
Okay, awesome. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you, everybody. We will be putting this video up online for any review. Please reach out if you have specific questions. And thank you all for being here. Have a really nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you.